Get to our first guest, Pennsylvania Congressman on the House Appropriations Committee, Guy Reschenthaler. Congressman, great to see you. Well, here it is again.
Chris, you too.
The White House having to admit that Biden doesn't make policy in his own administration. Biden claimed in the New York Times that he'd provided advanced rockets to Ukraine, prompting Russia to threaten a nuclear strike on the United States. Biden's know-nothing millennials had to backtrack, saying the missiles were given on condition they wouldn't be used against Russia. Congressman, politicians of both parties are treating Joe Biden's behavior as if it's normal. Should those politicians be in elected office today?
Well, no, and what you're seeing from Joe Biden is exactly what the world doesn't need, and that is he's incredibly ambiguous. He steps in it when he speaks. He is not very clear when he's making these statements. And what it does is it gives uncertainty to people like Putin or the dictator in China, Xi. And what that does is it weakens our ability to deter conflict. Just look at these missiles. We should be giving these missiles to the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians should be using them to reach up to 40 miles into Russia to take out the batteries that are being used to rocket into Ukraine. There's nothing wrong with that. We should openly say we're supplying these arms, and of course the Ukrainians are going to use them against the Russians. Now, as far as the Russians saber-rattling with nuclear weapons, if we allow that to deter us from helping a Western democracy in Ukraine or elsewhere, then we might as well just hand our foreign policy over to the Russians or any nuclear power for that matter. It's incredibly unlikely that Putin and the Russians will use nuclear weapons. Yes, Chris.
Well, no, we already did. We already handed our foreign policy over to the Russians. They're the ones negotiating with Iran on their nuclear deal, courtesy of Team Biden. But, Congressman, I just want to press you on this because, look, the idea, ABC, NBC, CBS, the New York Times, the Washington Post, out there pretending that Joe Biden's behavior is normal. Virtually his entire party pretending it's normal that Joe Biden gets out there, talks out of his rear end, and that his millennial socialists back there at the White House have to correct it. It's unacceptable for, in my opinion, anybody in the Republican Party to suggest and not call this out every single time it happens. But there's Mitch McConnell. Oh, yeah. This is perfectly normal. We're going to make Joe Biden a moderate. The normalization of this absolutely dangerous idiocy, Congressman, is what I'm pushing back against. I'm hoping you're equally as angry at this, not only at the Democrats, but at your own party as well.
No, so I'm not defending Joe Biden's statements, and it is abnormal. What's also interesting to note here, you're absolutely right. And what's also interesting to note is, remember, every time President Trump had a perceived slip, everybody in the media was talking about the 25th Amendment, if he was competent to hold office. Now we have a president in office who I would argue has some issues with cognitive ability, yet where is the mainstream media asking every Democrat if the 25th Amendment should be invoked? Where are they saying that he might need to step down because he's unfit? Remember how they said President Trump was unfit ad nauseum for 4 years, yet they are now silent. And again, there's real life consequences when you have Joe Biden making these statements regarding foreign policy in particular, because the world listens. And just to go back to the Iranian nuclear deal, I just returned from a trip to Saudi Arabia. I can tell you our allies in Saudi Arabia are incredibly concerned that Joe Biden is selling the Arab world down the river so that he can get a perceived win with Iran. And let me tell you, if Iran goes nuclear, it is a huge problem for the region. It's a huge problem for us. It's a really big problem for Israel. And our allies in the Middle East are sitting there watching this president give this sweetheart deal to the Iranians, who just take the money they get from the United States and fund terror organizations everywhere from Hezbollah to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and leading to destabilize that region. And it's all because Joe Biden and before then President Obama thought that they could score points for the international community to get this deal.
Oh, Obama, let me be clear. Let's turn over nukes to the Iranians. What could go wrong? Let me be clear. Look, the Democrats are up to, they want to vote on a bill for gun control. None of the provisions in this bill would actually stop the Uvalde shooting or any of these mass shootings. So that's what they're concentrating on. You've been concentrating. You recently passed one of your bills in support of our first responders. Tell me about the legislation.
Thanks, Chris. So what my bill does, which passed with bipartisan support, I should add, is it makes sure that police get the resources they need for things such as PTSD. It really focuses on mental health. Additionally, it makes sure that if an officer dies by suicide, that it's very likely that that suicide and the depression was caused by something that he or she did in the line of duty, then the family gets a death benefit just as if the officer was killed in the line of duty. It's incredibly important. But I'm taking steps to actually support law enforcement, taking steps to advance mental health care in this country, needed steps. The Democrats, by contrast, are doing nothing but trying to drive political wedges through this country. They never miss an opportunity to politicize a tragedy. And that's what you're seeing going on right now with this most recent shooting.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. When criminals go nuts in America, the Democrats say, let's punish the law abiding. That's a great way to go. There's growing concern over China trying to purchase Forbes. Now, Congressman, with ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBS, the New York Times, and others already pushing the communist propaganda under the Democrat banner, do we really need the CCP here in America with a direct channel to our people?
No, we don't. And thank you for mentioning that all those other outlets have basically been co-opted by the Chinese Communist Party. Just look at Disney and how they kowtow to the Chinese Communist Party. The difference, and that's bad enough, but the difference between what U.S. corporations and U.S. media are doing now and if the CCP were to purchase Forbes is that every article coming out of Forbes would in essence be Chinese propaganda, and it would have the color of legitimacy because it would be coming from what was a trusted news source. That's why this is so problematic. And let me be clear about something. The Chinese view the United States as an existential threat to them. The Chinese clearly believe that anytime historically you have a rising power and a collapsing power, and they view us as a falling, collapsing power and themselves as a rising power, they think that historically, anytime that happens, those two great powers come into conflict. They are clearly preparing for a conflict with the West. I wish we would wake up and realize that and recognize that we are in a Cold War with China, and their aim is to replace us as the global superpower.
Yeah, well, under Joe Biden, the Democrats, the surrender of America is all but assured to communists. They're more ideologically aligned, as you know, Congressman. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, thank you, sir. We appreciate the time as always.
Thank you, Chris.